Welcome to the Preparing for Childbirth podcast, where we'll talk about God's amazing design for childbirth, learn how to prepare for the unknown, handle the pain, and lean into God's character through it all. I'm your host, Jenny Childs. I'm a follower of Jesus, a wife, a mom, and lover of all things childbirth. Thanks so much for joining me today. This is episode 44. Today, I want to share with you part of a conversation that I had recently with a good friend about planning for a VBAC. That's a vaginal birth after cesarean. Julie and I have known each other for a long time. She was single when I first met her, and now she's been married for 6 years and is the mother of a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old. We met at church, where she was already a member when we joined shortly after arriving in Kenya over 10 years ago. And we were in the same small group together for a number of years. I also had the privilege of being Julie's doula for her most recent birth. Let's jump into the conversation where I've just asked Julie why she wanted to have a VBAC.
So my first child was a C-section. And the reason for the C-section was, I'd gotten induced. And I didn't do your class for the first child. First mistake. I did not do your class. So I remember I called you in the process, like right before they wanted to induce me. And I was like, I don't know if I should do this. Should I do this? And we met and we talked, but it was very last minute. So I was clearly thinking about everything at the very last minute. So I'd gone past 40 weeks. I was 40 weeks and 5 days. But again, there was a little bit of drama around whether I was really 40 weeks and 5 days, because I thought I was 39 weeks and 5 days. My care provider said I was 40 weeks and 5 days. And anyway, he had a policy that he doesn't go beyond 40 weeks and 5 days. And so he wanted to get me induced. And I'd gone to hospital because I was concerned about like movements. And so I'd gone to hospital like basically at that 40 weeks, 5 days. I just happened to have gone to hospital at that point. And they monitored the baby and the baby was fine. But the doctor was like, well, now you're here. And I have this policy. So why don't you stay and be induced, right? And so I was like, eventually just decided to proceed with the induction. And basically, they just did one thing after the other, and which had no effect. I think I was just not ready. I was not ready to go into labor. My body was not ready. They gave me I think it's called prostaglandins. Then, I don't think they did a cervical sweep, but they did break my water at some point. And then like at that point, it's like, you're committed. Right. You're committed to delivering this child. Yeah. And then at some point, they also, because nothing was happening, they gave me the Pitocin. Okay. And so, but I'd also told them that, like, because I'd heard so much about how painful it is to labor with, through induction, once they start the chemical induction, I was like, you guys are not putting this Pitocin in my body until and unless there is an anesthesiologist like right here next to me to give me epidurals, because I was like, I'm willing to try labor like naturally, but at the point where we're doing chemical induction, I'm done. I'm not trying that. I'm not doing that. And so so I ended up actually the anesthesiologist came, because I part of the reason I was asking for that is because one of my friends had wanted an epidural, and at the point where they should have gotten it, they couldn't find the anesthesiologist. And so it was like 20 more minutes before they finally found the anesthesiologist and, were able to give her that. So I was like, no. You will not do this to me. I will have my epidural. I will not feel this pain. So the anesthesiologist came, and actually they weren't supposed to do this because they worked with that doctor before, and they know like they weren't supposed to give me the epidural at that point, because I don't think you're supposed to get it before you're certain number of centimeters dilated, and I was like 2 centimeters. But he gave it to me even before they put in the
Pitocin.
The Pitocin. So I got the epidural, then I got the Pitocin. And it felt nothing other than numbness, right? But at some point now in that process, because I was hooked up to the monitor now, I noticed that the baby's heart rate dropped quite dramatically. And so I alerted the nurses, and the doctor came in and he was like, yeah, we need to go into theater. We need to get this baby out. Okay. So that's how I ended up getting that C-section, which I was at peace with, because they also, like, when they went in there, they found like the cord was wrapped around the baby's neck, but I don't know how tight, and I don't know. I've also heard that that's
quite
not
common for the cord to be wrapped around the baby's neck.
Yeah, but
it's usually not a problem.
It's usually not a problem, but I think having not known that, and also having known instances where it has been a problem, it was like, I was quite relieved. I was like, okay, thank God that I got this C-section. It was good. So now, I don't know. I can't say whether that was a necessary C-section or not. It's hard to say. Even what caused the baby's heart to plummet, like, was it a real distress, or was it like because of the interventions that I was going through? Was it because of the epidural? Like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Right.
So it's hard to tell. So there was a lot that I did not know clearly with my first birth. Yeah. And so coming into this pregnancy with my last born, I decided I did want to try vaginal delivery. So coming into this second birth experience, I wanted to do a VBAC. I primarily wanted to do it because my husband and I go back and forth about how many children we want, but we do want sort of more than what is typical of like C-section, multiple C-section births. And so basically I just didn't want to be limited by having another C-section. I didn't want to be locked onto a path. I didn't want to be like, okay, we'll only do 3 because, because that's all we can do, because of the risks, and so on and so forth. So that's why I wanted to do primarily, why I wanted to do a VBAC, because size of family. Yeah, initially, I remember I told you this. Initially, I was like, I'm not one of those people who's like, I ardently desire to feel this natural process. I just want to know how God designed it. I just want to feel that. Like, I was like, no.
That was not what was motivating you.
No, not initially.
And how did your family feel about the idea of a VBAC?
So my husband, who was the most important stakeholder, was largely like, he felt whatever I felt.
Okay.
Because he didn't know anything.
Right.
He didn't have any information either about CSs or VBACs or anything. So he was like, you want to do what? Okay, sounds good.
Yes.
I support you. That was pretty much, that.
Uh-huh.
My mother, I know she has shared with me that, she was nervous. And I think it's just because, the default, I think even like for their generation, the default assumption was that once you do a CS, you have to always do a CS. Therefore, I think, that what was implied in that is like, it would be a very, very risky venture to try and do a normal delivery after you've done a CS. So my mom was nervous. I talked to her a lot about the data and but she didn't show it a lot, and she was supportive. She didn't say a lot of things, which is good. But I know she was nervous, and like after the fact, we talked about the fact that she was a little bit nervous about that. But she took it to God, her nervousness.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. So how then did you prepare for this birth, for a VBAC?
Yeah, so I remember I told you that I felt like I'm like the worst VBAC candidate in the world. So I think there's 2 kinds of preparation. One I was better at, the other one I was not. I think the physical preparation I was not as good at. But I think for me, the thing that I did do, I think, a decent job of is doing my research. So I did a lot of reading. I did your class, yes. Which you compelled me to do because before you would doula me. So I did your class, which was very helpful. And yeah, I tried to read around and listen to, like, read information about, what are really the statistics around risk. Why do doctors generally have this aversion to like vaginal delivery after a CS? Is that warranted? Is it not warranted? What are some of the situations where where it would be a good idea to get a CS, some of the situations where it's like, no, you can try. I remember I was also very concerned about like whether my pelvis was too small, because that's something I had, like the doctor had told me in passing. He hadn't set it out as a verdict, but as a possibility, because with my first, even by the time that I was being induced, he hadn't even engaged yet. And so, you know, I remember when I think I had my 39-week appointment, and I was asking, oh, has he engaged? He was like, no. You know, it could be that, you know, there's just some people's, you know, pelvises are like the shape, the what, sometimes it doesn't work, you know. And so I thought the reason he hadn't engaged could be because my pelvis was too small. So I was like, there was for me that possibility, like, oh, could it be that my pelvis is too small? And that's one of the things I read about. And I remember you shared an article about that. And really the only way to know that is to try. And so, yeah, so I did a lot of research. I also listened to a few podcasts, like listened to stories of folks who'd done VBACs in much more complicated situations than mine, even, you know, with twins, or, you know, they actually had an issue like gestational diabetes and they still did a VBAC, or I listened to all these stories, which was also helpful. But I think for me, the kind of person I am, I know that a story is a story. It's anecdotal. Like you can't generalize from one story or two stories or 5 stories. So I really did need like data. I needed to know like, okay, what are the percentages? What is the statistics? You know, so I looked for a lot of that.
And you found enough data to help you feel comfortable with pursuing the VBAC.
Yeah. So I think what made me feel comfortable is just realizing that yes, you know, I think the primary thing that doctors are concerned about in cases of VBAC is uterine rupture. And first of all, I didn't realize that uterine rupture is a risk even if you don't have a VBAC, even if it's your first pregnancy, like it's always a risk because you're pregnant and you're contracting. And so...
But it's a small risk.
But it's a very small risk. But it is a much smaller risk for someone who's never had a CS than it is for someone who has had a CS. So that was helpful to me to understand like where doctors are coming from when they say it's riskier. But then now when I looked deeper into the numbers, it's like it is riskier, but the risk is still small.
It's still a small risk.
It's like the difference between 0.001 and the difference, you know, and 0.1.
Right.
It's like that's 100 times more, but like at the same time, that's a small risk, right? So it's riskier, but it's still very unlikely to happen. And it's much more likely to happen if you have certain interventions, especially like Pitocin. Which is why I told my doctor, like, no matter what happens, like I would rather go for a CS than have Pitocin at all, any dosage of Pitocin as part of an induction process. So yeah, so those kind of numbers really helped me. Like I'm a very evidence-based kind of person, and just understanding those nuances really helped me. It also helped me, to be like, I can see where doctors are coming from, and you know, it's fair for them to like feel like that because they're doctors. Like their job is to like minimize risk and deal with problems. It's not to deal with everything is okay.
Right.
They come in when something's wrong. So it helped me understand them, and also, especially because I defer a lot to you know, authority and to experts and that kind of thing, and so it was important for me to be like, okay, if a doctor is saying this, my natural instinct would be like, they're the doctor. I need to do what they're saying. They're the doctor, but having this understanding helped me see, okay, I see why they're saying this, but at the same time, you know, it's not quite as risky as you might feel if you just listen to a doctor.
Right. So once you had that settled in your mind that this is a good idea, it's okay to pursue the VBAC, what are some of the things that you did to set yourself up for the best chance of success? Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing that I did was early on, it took me a long time to find a doctor and to settle on a doctor and like where, just basically hospital provider, doctor, who was going to do this with me and where was it going to be done.
Right.
And I mean, right up until like 38 weeks, things were shifting, right?
Yes.
And decisions were being made right up to very close to delivery. It's very hard to find somebody who is supportive and genuinely supportive. Like I'd heard stories of doctors who, they'll say they're supportive, but they'll say you can try. But really, in their minds, they have like an exit. They have like an off-ramp.
Right. When it comes down to it.
They're not going to really encourage you in that direction. And so it was very hard. It was very hard to find a care provider. And I think the most important thing I did was select, one of the most important things I did was select a doctor who I think was as supportive as it gets. I think you now agree.
Yes, I do.
You having met him and,
It was one of the things that as I watched you, because I was present for the birth as your doula, and as I watched you interact with this doctor, was your rapport with him.
Yeah.
You two had a good rapport. You were able to listen, and he was able to listen to you. You were able to push back.
Yeah.
He pushed back some, but you had a good working relationship.
Yeah. And that was very important because my first provider with my first pregnancy, he was a lot older than me. He'd done it for a long time. He was highly respected. I'm not saying this current doctor is not respected, but like he had that age gap, I think, made it very difficult for us for me to communicate with him. And he had a certain kind of mindset, and he was very upfront about it. He was like, if you want to tell me how to do my job, like, you do it. It's like, you don't come to a doctor and like, tell them how. He was very much like, defer to me, right? I know what I'm doing. If a medical decision is to be made, like, trust my judgment. So that, and combined with the fact that he was a lot older than me, and just kind of how we're socialized as Africans to relate with elders, made it very difficult for me to ask him anything, to question anything, to make it look like I might at all be questioning his judgment or pushing back against anything he's saying. So I was very clear that I wasn't going to go back to him, not because he wasn't a good doctor.
Right.
He was a good doctor, but because I wouldn't have that freedom. And so that was one of the things that was very helpful about the doctor that I chose. He was younger, so we could relate at a more peer level, at least in terms of age, even though I definitely respected his expertise as a doctor. Yeah, and he was just, his personality, he was just easy to talk to. He was much easier to go back and forth and be like, but, I read somewhere that, so when you say this, does it really mean, could it also mean, it was very easy to have those kind of conversations with him. Yeah, and that was one of the biggest things that made me choose him, was that dynamic, just that freedom that I felt to ask questions, make comments, debate.
Yes. And it was good. I saw that played out, and it was a good relationship there.
But I was also very, very careful, even in the way I asked questions. Like I was very aware that I didn't want to make him feel like I don't recognize that he's an expert, or that I don't recognize that he's the doctor. So even if, like, sometimes I would ask him questions that I knew the answer to, just so that he could answer them, because just to like be like, okay, no, I know you're the doctor, and like, I'm just introducing this idea, but I want you to be the one to say it, right? So I tried to be very careful not to in any way make him feel like, because I think that's the other thing that doctors are wary of, and that makes them sort of hesitant, even even when you come to them first and say you want to do a VBAC. They're like not enthusiastic about it. Like even the doctor that I saw, I mean, he was supportive, but there's a restraint that they have, and I think it's because sometimes maybe they engage people who, it's like the way they communicate makes them feel like you're gonna do this no matter what happens, no matter if whether there's a and they feel like they need to keep you in check, and so I think that coming in with some humility and being like, I hear you on the risk, I understand, like, and treating them like with respect as a doctor, is helpful.
Yeah, that's good. Another piece that you looked at and thought about carefully was where you delivered.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things about that had to do with distance from home. Talk about why that was important and how that played out.
So initially, the doctor that I was seeing delivers typically at Kijabe Hospital. So really
that's far from where you live.
That's far from where I live. That's about an hour's drive. And there's a section of the road that is not very pleasant.
Yes.
Yeah, so initially my plan was to go to that hospital, like just because that's where he typically delivers, and I was seeing him, and like that, it was a package deal. And then I spoke to a midwife who you connected me to, and other people had also like shared that she was really good, and she's done a lot of home births, and she's done a lot of VBACs. And anyway, so I talked to her, and she's the one who first made me question that idea of going all the way to Kijabe, because she was like, have you taken a drive down there while you're pregnant? Just pregnant? Maybe you should do that before you commit. Because she was like, when you're in labor, because my desire was to labor at home as long as possible before I go to hospital. And ideally go to hospital when I'm in active labor. And she's like, when you're in active labor, that road may not be what you want to be going down, right? So just go try it even now when you're like third trimester, heavily pregnant. See how you feel about that ride. So that was what first set me off, like, oh, okay, maybe Kijabe wouldn't work. And then I started trying to like find permutations that could work. Like, oh, what if we went up like a couple of weeks before? Because I also had to think about like my toddler, and I was like, okay, maybe we go like rent a place for a couple of weeks, but then labor is so unpredictable. So like, how do you know when to go and like rent a place so that you're close enough that you can labor elsewhere? And then even that, like you're laboring elsewhere, but it's not a place where you're normally comfortable. So I tried various permutations to make it work, but it was clear that was just a very complicated setup. And so I did search for another hospital, considered another hospital, but then my doctor said they weren't comfortable delivering there because they hadn't done it before, and because they just wanted to be in a place where they know if things go down, they know where everything is, they know, who to talk to about what.
Right.
So the only other place that he delivers, which is, I think he does it rarely, but he's worked there before. He used to be employed there, is MP Shah. So which
was much closer to you.
Which is much closer to me. So basically what we ended up doing is we had like two plans. Like, so when I talked to him at my, I think 39-week appointment, we said that if I go into labor by this day, then we will do MP Shah. If I haven't gone into labor by this day, we will do an induction, in which case that's a whole scheduled process. It's a little bit less complicated logistically. And I'll go up to Kijabe. And we'll do the induction, and we'll do the process at Kijabe. So we had like these two potential approaches. Fortunately, I went into labor at just the right time. And he delivered. It was his off day actually, and he delivered at MP Shah.
And so you mentioned talking with a midwife, but you ultimately did not use a midwife for the delivery. In what way? Talk to me about how she played into your...
So I had the good fortune of having you as a doula, which was really helpful. But the reason I also wanted a midwife is because it was just for my peace of mind, because, she was coming with certain equipment, she would be able to do, checks, if it's a, cervical checks, if that was needed. And she would most importantly to me, be able to provide some monitoring for the baby. So even though I knew the data and everything, I also wanted to just be like as safe as possible. And so I did want to be in a position where somebody can intermittently just check the baby's okay, the heart rate's okay, and just give me that peace of mind so that I'm not stressed.
And this was to allow you to labor at home as long as possible.
Exactly.
So you were able to contract with her for her services up to a certain point, like to help you be at home as long as possible, knowing that you were still going to the hospital. Later.
Exactly. And it ended up being a little bit of a costly process, which wasn't the plan, right? I had planned to go to Kijabi. I ended up in Mprisha. It's a lot more expensive than Kijabi. You know, that I'd brought on the midwife thinking I was going to Kijabi. I ended up not going to Kijabi. So it ended up being a little more costly than we planned for and then would have been ideal. Fortunately, we did have some insurance cover some of the cost. But yeah, I basically just wanted to have the best of both worlds, like the ability to monitor, but not like limit my movements, but monitor the baby and make sure like I feel like I'm doing my best to make a safe decision for everybody. Yeah.
Julie really put in the time and effort to be as prepared as possible to put herself in a good position for a successful VBAC. Finding a good supportive team was a key part of that process, and it made a big difference in how things went for Julie with her second birth. In the next episode of the Preparing for Childbirth podcast, which will release the last week of February 2026, I'll pick up my conversation with Julie, and she'll share the story of how that birth went. If you're listening to this podcast at the time of release, I wanted to take a minute to let you know what to expect from the Preparing for Childbirth podcast this year. My goal is to release one episode a month for the duration of 2026. This is a big transition year for me and my family, thus the slower pace for the podcast, and I'm hoping I can even keep up with that pace. If you've enjoyed today's podcast or found it helpful, I hope you'll share it with a friend, and I'd love for you to leave a rating and review. If you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, you can even leave a comment if you want. Is there a topic you'd like me to address on the podcast, or do you have a question you'd like me to try and answer? If so, feel free to use the link in the show notes to let me know what that is. Or you can send me an email at jenny@preparingforchildbirth.com. It's my prayer that these podcasts will help you grow in confidence and peace as the day draws near for you to meet your little one, and as you continue to walk on this parenting journey. I'm so glad you tuned in today.